Welcome back to an incredibly oversimplified and abridged history of musical theater. Episode 4, Enter the Juggernauts.
After the success of movie musicals of the 60s, more and more people started thinking, I can do this, and made more movie musicals, until 1973, when Lost Horizon ruined it for everyone. Sort of. People still liked the popular music of the time, and so they were more into musicals if they could connect the type of music they used. This is when we started seeing more movies like Rocky Horror and Grease. Eventually, people realized what they were missing, and movie musicals as well as movies that people forgot weren't actually musicals became popular again.
Meanwhile, in the live theater scene, two composers who were born only 16 days apart were starting to make a name for themselves, Andrew Lloyd Webber and Stephen Schwartz. Webber was born in London, where he grew up loving history. At 16, he was introduced to a guy named Tim Rice. They would become friends, write some songs, and one day, one of his family friends asked the duo to write a short piece for his school's choir. Bam! Webber and Rice gave him Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. They said, that was pretty good, let's do another religion-based show. Bam! Jesus Christ Superstar. They said, that was great, but let's try branching off a little. Jeeves. Exactly. Don't worry though, these guys would be fine. Rice would go work for Disney, helping to create some of their biggest hits, and Webber would go on to have a net worth of over $1 billion thanks to a Phantom and some cats. But more on that later.
Across the pond in the US, Schwartz was writing great shows himself. At 23, he wrote Godspell, which, with the Toronto production, would kick off the careers of all these folks. At 24, he wrote Pippin, and from there, he kept writing great but not super popular musicals. He got recruited by animated movies in the 90s and killed it, then became super famous all over again in 2003 for writing Wicked.
The biggest composer of this time, though, was another Stephen Sondheim, or Steve if you're Meryl Streep. Just for fun, we're going to call him Steve too. Steve was about 20 years older than the other two guys, so by the time we started hearing about them, Steve had already worked on Broadway for a while, with some pretty good success. Shows like West Side Story, Gypsy, and A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum made him a well-known theater name.
Then came the 70s. He teamed up with director-producer Hal Prince, and the duo took over. Over the next 10 years, they would have 5 shows open on Broadway, all of which Steve wrote the music and the lyrics for, and Hal produced and directed. In that time, these 5 shows would go on to win a combined 29 Tonys, including 11 for Sondheim and Prince. While Steve's shows, or at least his scores, were often praised by critics and hardcore theater lovers, only 5 of his 16 shows broke even financially with their original Broadway productions. He had more financial success with later revivals of his work, even getting a Broadway theater named after him in 2010. Today, he is still known as one of the greatest composers of all time, and recently celebrated his 90th birthday with a star-studded virtual concert special. Killing it, Steve!
As these gentlemen continued their success into the 80s, we saw classics being born, like Annie, A Chorus Line, and Chicago. People were enjoying the clever storytelling and catchy music of theater at this time, and then bam! Enter another Londoner named Cameron Mackintosh. Sir Cameron Mackintosh saw financial potential in bringing theater to countries and communities that had not been as exposed to theater at this time, and also potential in adding more spectacle to the stage. Over the next 10 years, he'd introduce mainstream audiences to Schoenberg and Boublil for their works Les Miserables and Miss Saigon, as well as produce both of Webber's most popular shows, Cats and The Phantom of the Opera, which is still running on Broadway after over 33 years and will never close.
Whether it be through collaborative, creative, or commercial success, these men changed the game forever. It's nearly impossible to see a show today that wasn't in some way influenced by these legends. Their work and its influences are everywhere, from Modern Family to Joker and beyond. From this point, people in the industry needed to step up their game, or reinvent their game completely. Enter the revolutionary 1990s.
Tune in Sunday for episode 5 of an incredibly oversimplified and abridged history of musical theater.